look, I have something to share with you that I think provides real depth and understanding of quite the journey that George is going on. And I'd really be grateful if you would all take particular interest in what it is that I've got to say, and I guess the Vision Crusaders team. I'm guessing that before George reached out to you, you hadn't heard of the Vision Crusaders work before. Would that be fair?
Yes.
So hopefully my aim is to share with you not just who the Vision Crusaders are, but a bit about my personal journey and why people like Georgie and others in the Vision Crusaders, but particularly Georgie because of what she does for a living, mean to people like myself and others. So this picture I'll explain a little later to give you a bit of an understanding of what it's about. You can kind of see that, yes, I'm wearing the jersey these folks are wearing, but I'm also, this is me lying on the ground down here, by the way. Little did I know what would happen 6 weeks later, just so you know, but I'll explain what happened 6 weeks later. That's me on the ground and wearing these outrageous black milk leggings, and I'm guessing most of the women in the room know what black milk leggings are, but little did you know that men like them too. So look, in 2011, I started what's now called the Vision Crusaders. It's a team that I began in 2011. I had moved from Sydney to the Gold Coast. I travelled internationally a lot, had become fat and lazy and unwell in terms of, I guess, my general health and well-being. And I had arthritis in my right leg and my right knee in particular, and so I actually had lost a lot of mobility and was in a lot of pain and discomfort as a result of that. My wife Edith decided to enroll me into a personal training course. And in 3 months I transformed myself. At the end of 3 months, my personal trainer, I was sitting on a spin bike cooling down, said to me, "Klaus, you need a new goal." Now those who know me, and many of you don't, know that I'm not at all motivated by bullshit goals relating to health. It doesn't work for me in terms of, let's go and climb Mount Everest because it's a good thing to do. That doesn't work for me. But he looked at me and said, "You need a new goal," and he rattled off his ideas. And eventually said to me, "You know, Klaus, why don't you do this new ride that's come to Australia for the first time in Brisbane called the Ride to Conquer Cancer, the inaugural ride. 200 kilometres over 2 days. And to put some perspective to this, I'd never ridden more than 5 kilometres in my life. I never raised money for charity in my life of any significance at all, beyond the $50, $100 that most of us do. And here was my personal trainer saying to me, "Why don't you do 200 kilometres over 2 days and raise $2,500 in order for you to do this ride?" And it's all about cancer research. I looked up at him, looked back down, didn't say a word, went home, went on the website, signed up, came back in the next day and said, "Damo, we're putting a team together, you and I, to do this ride." I've just signed up. Next thing I know, 15 people joined the team, and so began the Vision Crusaders. What he didn't know was that 11 years earlier, I was a melanoma sufferer. I had stage 3 melanoma. Stage 4 kills you. Stage 3 is about as scary as you want to be when it comes to melanoma. Stage 4 kills you within about a month. So I had my experience and stayed silent for 11 years in relation to having had cancer. Melanoma, most folks don't kind of relate to cancer in quite the same way. Now, I knew nothing about riding, as you can tell. It was my bike. It was a mountain bike that I converted with road tyres on it. Great gear that I had no idea what I was getting myself in for, let me tell you. 200 kilometres over 2 days. The second day, the last 50 kilometres, was in classic torrential Brisbane rain. It was unbelievable. This is what 1,500 bikes look like. So I was joined by 1,500 other riders on this particular event to do this first inaugural Ride to Conquer Cancer in Brisbane. There was only one in 2011, it was just in Brisbane. Something kind of interesting happened, and I think in hindsight I now understand why. I was asked to speak at the opening ceremony and tell my story about being a melanoma survivor and why I was doing this ride. And partway through the story I kind of lost my emotions because 6 weeks earlier a good friend of ours had died of breast cancer, and this quite meant a lot to me, not just for me personally. But it was an honour to get up and present at the opening ceremony of this particular presentation. This is some of the 2011 team. We raised 50 grand for cancer research that year. $4.7 million, I believe, from memory, all up in that first year. 1,500 cyclists raised for cancer research. Had a big impact. There were 15 of us. In 2012, I decided I enjoyed that experience so much, being surrounded by 1,500 truly amazing people, that I should go and do the original ride. This all started in Canada. And so I went to do the original ride in Canada, which is from Toronto to Niagara Falls. It's called the Pacific Challenge. 270 kilometres over 2 days, 170 kilometres in the first day, 100 kilometres in the second day. The first day, by the way, was headwinds and rain almost the whole way. And climbing a kilometre to what's called Hamilton. So I went, that's my bags and a train heading off to Brisbane International Airport to do this ride in Canada. That's in Toronto in the morning, what 5,500 cyclists looked like getting to do this ride. They raised $22 million on that day for cancer research in Toronto. And I was fortunate to be a part of it and quite pleased to be a part of it. This is in Niagara Falls. Pip, who's standing next to me, actually happened to be in America at the time. Decided she would get a bike and come and join me and do the ride with me. Amazing lady herself. And so that was an extraordinary experience for me, and I went, okay, that's pretty cool. And of course, some who know me know I've got to become known in the Vision Crusaders a bit of media stuff. I'll do anything to promote cancer research. This is me on camera doing a breakfast show in Canada, promoting why I was there and what I was doing, and I'd be keen to hear from an Aussie. That was the end of the first day, 171 kilometres. I took that photo because that was the last time I was likely to do 171k in one day. 7 hours and 15 minutes on a bike, on a saddle. I couldn't feel things you should be able to feel at the end of a ride like that with a bike. So it was an interesting experience. That's what 2,500 tents look like. You share tents, 2 people to a tent. So this is a sea of blue tents that awaits you when you finish day 1 of the ride. So Georgie, at the end of day 1 for her Melbourne ride, will find there'll be a sea of blue tents there greeting her, as well as people to participate. The next morning we all get up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and get ready to complete the second day. And this is what we see more often than not, which is long streaming roads ahead of us that we need to complete in order to do this ride. Having raised $2,500 to do these rides, it's like to raise $2,500 to be eligible for a ride. So unless you raise $2,500 grand, you can't do these rides. That's Georgie has to raise $2,500 before she's eligible to complete the ride in Melbourne. Otherwise, she won't be allowed to ride on the day. This was the team of 2012, so only I think 7 or 8 of us all up, including some crew. My wife decided to join me, she's in the middle there, this particular ride. We raised 30 grand in the second year for cancer research, only 8 of us all up, 6 riders and 2 crew. In 2013 I had a kind of crazy idea that I think embodies what the Vision Crusaders have since become. And that is, I kind of said to myself, you know, if raising $2,500 is regarded as a challenge for most people, if considering riding 200 kilometres over 2 days is a challenge for most people, at that point, by the way, the Ride to Conquer Cancer had spread across Australia and New Zealand. There are now 6 rides available in 2013. Brisbane, Sydney, Perth, Melbourne, Auckland and Adelaide was the last ride. 6 rides, 1,200 kilometres to be completed over 12 days and $15,000 each. I kind of thought, you know what an interesting idea. Let's do the Grand Slam. So I thought I would do the Grand Slam. Complete all 6 rides last year in 2013, raise $15,000 and give it a crack, and hopefully in doing so inspire other people who were like me in the first time I started. Thought, you know what, doing 200k seems hard, doing close to $2.5 grand seems hard, but if I can do all 6, surely you'll all see doing this is easy, right? That sounds completely sensible logic, right? Was that the thought of crazy man? Well, the next thing I knew, 24 other people around Australia decided to join me. And Nico, who's sitting down here, was one of those people who decided to join me. Nico was also one of the people who completed the Grand Slam last year. We did all 6 rides and raised more than $15,000 to help them do so. And I was gobsmacked, quite frankly. I had people in Perth, team members in Perth, in Sydney, in Melbourne, all wanting to be part of this crazy Vision Crusaders team led by some idiot in the Gold Coast, me, to do this ride. Now, we kind of thought, how are we going to raise this money? We need to be smart about how we're going to get the attention of Australian corporate companies and others to support us. So one of my team members in Melbourne, a lady called Danny Stevens, who has a blog, dannystevens.com, we decided to use her image and her face and her presence to help us secure some kind of international support and some local support to get people behind us. We have to raise $250,000 to do these, to complete these rides. So we put a call out for Richard Branson to come ride with us. And we thought, you know, what do you do this? On visioncrusaders.com, which is our website, you'll see a bunch of photos. This is just some of them. People all around the world holding up a sign saying, Richard, please ride with the Vision Crusaders. No? This is a cinema of people holding up a sign saying, please ride with the Vision Crusaders. This is Richard Branson saying, hey Danny, we're behind you. We're behind the Vision Crusaders, will help you. He didn't come ride with us, sadly, in 2013. He couldn't, his diary wouldn't support it. But he blogged about us. He got up and supported us, and it enabled the team to make some progress. This is the closest I got to Richard, which was in the Virgin Australia in Flight magazine. I travel a lot, as you can kind of tell from my status, but I travel a lot. And I was the first that decided to put up and it is now regularly every month, a story about someone who's doing something for the community, something for charity. And I was the first that I did this in the Crusaders, and Richard happened to be a story next to me, completely unrelated to me. So on day 1 of the Brisbane ride, the 2013 ride of the Vision Crusader team, we celebrated 20 kilometres into day 1. A really important journey of one of our team members, a guy called Robert Dixon. Robert is a cancer survivor, a lymphoma survivor, and what he's holding up there is his bike with a couple of extra tyres, symboling something quite important. He had now ridden 20,000 kilometres since diagnosis. He was told when he was diagnosed that increasing his fitness would help him go through chemo and improve his health. He took it literally and started cycling while on chemo. And this was him only a couple of years later, 3 years later, having done 20,000 kilometres on his bike. And so at 20 kilometres into the first day, that's when his meter tripped over, and we all stopped and took this photo together as a team. So a pretty important moment for us. And if you can tell, a pretty crazy bunch. Notice that there are only a couple of people wearing those black leggings at this point in time. It wasn't something we were all into at this point. Then day 2, we all got fogged in. And so we waited 3 hours before the police would allow us, remember 1,500 cyclists, to ride back into Brisbane from where we were at a dam. And the fog you can see behind us. Now, for some odd reason, a member of my team, who will remain nameless, not, Kip is his name, recall him, had for whatever reason 9 black belt leggings in his bag. I don't quite know why to this day why he had those black belt leggings in his bag. But before I know it, as we were waiting to take off, one by one they came out, and one by one members of the team started putting them on. I was the last to put them on. And it's me lying down on the ground with a pair that he had given me to ride home on that day. It's become a symbol of the Vision Crusaders ever since. Because if we're crazy enough to wear these things for cancer research, we're crazy enough to get the attention of those around us to support us. And it's been an amazing impact on the brand and the image of what the team is all about. We're ordinary people, for goodness sake. Nothing special about us. We're not a company, we're just ordinary people. There's another photo that morning with one of the key sponsors and more of the team as well. So 5.5 weeks later, so there's a gap between the Brisbane team and the second ride, being the Sydney ride. this stage I've raised most of what I needed to complete almost all of these 6 rides. And 3 days before the Sydney ride, well, a few more days before that, I'm starting with my arthritis in my knees. I mentioned my knees started to get a bit angry, a bit shitty. And I kind of thought, what's going on? I went out for a ride with one of the team members from Brisbane, that's me on the left, and little did I know that my knee would reveal something kind of unexpected in terms of what happened 24 hours later. 24 hours later, I found myself fighting cancer again for the 2nd time, having been diagnosed with leukemia. And that night at 9:30, my phone rang and my oncologist rang me up and said, Klaus, you need to get to the hospital now. We need to admit you immediately and commence chemotherapy immediately. I had to notify my team that I was no longer going to join them in Sydney. And why? They had to complete the Grand Slam without me, which is my idea. That was hard, not just for me, but for my wife, who, for the 2nd time I've known her, now had to experience the journey that her husband had been diagnosed with cancer. And it's not an experience I can tell you that I enjoyed, nor that she enjoyed at all. And so here I was in hospital. That was day 1 in hospital, having taken a photo of myself, going, okay, here I am, what am I going to do? Do I crawl in a corner and fight this on my own, or do I do what I usually do and tend to want to do, which is to kind of make the most of it in some way for the benefit of both myself and others. And I had a team of 24 amazing people around me that were about to go on an important journey. You did hear me earlier saying I'm a bit crazy, right? This is my personal trainer, Ty, who decided that I needed a bit of support and inspiration while I was in hospital. I was put in hospital for 40 days and 40 nights, a bit like Noah, I kind of said at the end of it all. Didn't know I was going to be there that long, but I was there for treatment. I was isolated as well, so I didn't have to wear masks and gloves and gowns, but everyone that visited me did, because I had my particular version of leukemia meant that I had no white blood cells and no platelets, which meant I was open to disease. What was going to kill me in the first month was either a hemorrhage or the common cold. If I could avoid either in order to survive, that was my objective for the first month, was to live. Pretty simple objective, just to live for a month. Do that and you're okay, Klaus. So he decided he wanted to help me out, and he brought a spin bike into my room. So here I was in a hospital with a spin bike being delivered into my room. I was attached, you can't see it there, but I was attached to my chemotherapy in my arm, and I was getting chemo while cycling in my hospital room. And my team, of course, were riding. I couldn't ride with them, but I decided I had the gear, I had the bike, I had social media at my fingertips. I could be with them at least. So I did. So I did the best I could and joined them on as many rides as I could when I was well enough in hospital, and got on my spin bike and rode with them each weekend as they rode their ride. These are my heroes, people like Georgie. These are my nurses and my oncologists who look after me, who do amazing shit every day. How they do what they do, how they look people like me in the eyes, see what I'm going through, see my family what they're going through, and keep doing what they do, is nothing short of extraordinary to me. I love them to bits. They are amazing, amazing people. Don't ever believe that, yes, cancer patients go through a tough journey. They live it every day, non-stop as part of what they do, and I think they're amazing, and you should totally get behind and support everything that they do. This was on my bad day. So I had 2 bad days. Remember I said that my objective in the first 30 days was to not fall ill, not get sick. Well, I fell sick twice. The hospital system made me sick twice. That's my excuse. And on my bad day, this is a particularly bad day, I took this photo. What you can't see is that I had bloated by 15 kilos in 24 hours due to fluid take-up as a result of the drugs and other things that were going on. So the real photo looks even worse. Don't come and look at that, look horrible. But that's a brand that you may have all seen, right? That that's out there saying, fuck you, cancer. We're all going to succeed and win. What I didn't know, or what I learned 2 weeks after I got out of hospital, was my wife, who These are my boys, by the way, who's already come in. I've lost my hair at this stage in my journey. This was me going through day chemo, so actually being able to be let out, being able to go into day chemo, the chemo I needed, and cycling in that afternoon or that morning. So I cycled one morning and chemo in the afternoon. It was kind of useful for me. But it was dangerous what I was doing because of the nature of the chemo, but I couldn't care less. I wasn't going to stop. I'm a media slut, as I mentioned earlier. While I was in hospital, I did a Channel 9 interview on TV, and a Australian interview on Australian, to try to draw attention to not just what Vision Crusaders are doing, my team are doing, the fact that we all should be getting behind supporting cancer research, because you may not know this, but in Queensland, 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their lifetime. In the rest of Australia, it's 1 in 3, creeping up to 1 in 2. Which means half of you in this room are almost certainly going to get cancer in their lifetime. And research is the only way to stop it. Only way to stop it. This is the first day I was allowed out of hospital with my wife Edith. It's a special photo for me. I'd lost my hair, but it was my first day out of being in a room 24/7, like in jail. I couldn't get out. And so that was a really exciting period. But I also learned something 2 weeks later, post this picture, that I want to share with you that is kind of important, because while what a cancer patient goes through is an interesting journey, it's kind of tough, but we know what we have to do. We know what we've got to do. What we don't appreciate is kind of what the partner and family goes through. So my wife 2 weeks later said to me, 2 weeks after I was out of hospital, so 3 weeks after I was really ill, she said to me, you know, that night that you got seriously ill, that night, by the way, my temperature went from 36 to 41, and it stayed 41 most of the night, and I was on morphine and all sorts of drugs to try to deal with and manage the temperature I had got. She said to me 2 weeks after it out, she said, Klaus, I was expecting to get a phone call overnight to say you passed. And that kind of weighs to this day really heavily with me, is that how could my wife A, not say anything to me for so long, but B, have to feel, what's that feel like? What's it feel like knowing that you're at home and your husband's in hospital and what you're actually waiting for is a phone call to say that your husband's just passed? That's just got to be shocking, and that's what dawned on me, that while I thought I was going through a tough journey, what my wife was going through was much more significant than that, quite honestly. Now, I did mention the team are crazy. Nick is totally crazy. The rest of my team are crazy. This is Robert Dixon, the man who travelled 20,000 kilometres, one of the rides I couldn't be at. Orange, by the way, is the colour of leukemia. They decided to wear an orange boa on every ride in my eye. So I was with them, even though I couldn't be there. And because of I guess what I do in these rides, I'm called what's called an ambassador of these rides. And so whenever at the end of the day one, they celebrate the various achievements of various people, and they end up calling out the ambassadors. This is my team standing up and holding me up. That, by the way, is a yellow flag. When you see people ride with yellow flags on their cancer survivors or people who are currently getting cancer treatment. So they held up a flag with my jersey and an orange boa up for me, because I couldn't be there at every single ride across Australia and New Zealand. I'm enormously grateful for that, and they sent me every jersey at the end of each ride as well. Simon used to live in Melbourne. He's recently moved to sunnier weather in Brisbane. But he at his ride, and I don't recall which ride this, I think it might have been Sydney. You would know better than I would.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But he has, what you can't see on his photos, on his arm, the name Trav on one arm and the name Klaus on the other. He rode that ride for his team captain Klaus, me, and his mate Trav. Trav was fighting cancer, and I was too. Trav passed 2 months ago, and he had to go to his funeral. I'm not passing on Simon. He's an amazing guy. He's a character and victim. You meet him, you swear he's the weirdest guy you'll meet on the planet, and the biggest heart you'll ever know. Extraordinary. And then mad in Melbourne, it goes in this photo, second from the left. And in the Melbourne ride for Conquer Cancer, it happened to be garbage day. People putting all their rubbish out on the street. And the team rode past and saw some furniture and a TV and stopped, rearranged the furniture and the TV and took a photo of themselves on the way home on day 2. Funny bunch, they were apparently watching the footy. I don't know where their power's coming from, but they're watching the footy. Classic. Now, this is a guy called Matt Leescan. He's also completely mad. He's actually behind the black leggings. He decided to wear bright orange again in honour of me as part of his ride. In that photo, there was also my daughter. This is in Adelaide. This is the last ride. So because I couldn't complete day 2, I couldn't complete the rides, and my daughter decided that she would sign up and do the Adelaide ride in honour of her dad and raise some money herself to do that with her boyfriend at the time. And so that's a really interesting photo from my perspective. This is Robert Dixon, the little man, we call him. He's the big man of the team, an extraordinary guy. This is in Auckland with a bike on the side of the road. This is the team in Adelaide at the end of the last ride, celebrating the completion of the Grand Slam. No one had ever done the Grand Slam before anywhere in the world. It had never been thought of, and they did it. So in 2013, the team raised $250,000 for cancer research. Just 25 of them. Pretty cool, huh? I was impressed. I was blown away. I couldn't be at any of the rides, but I snuck up on them at the end of day 1 in Adelaide. I managed to get a leave pass to hop on a plane from just and I came and arrived without them knowing about it. And that surprised them all, and I was pretty happy about that. But then something kind of weird happened post 2013. Vision Crusaders took a life of its own. There are now over 400 people in the Vision Crusaders across Australia and New Zealand. The team has already raised $231,000 and the Brisbane ride hasn't commenced yet. And I kind of wonder what the team will achieve before the end of the last ride, which will be around the middle of November, and the Auckland ride is the last ride. So far, the Vision Crusaders, since I started the team in 2011, have raised $561,000 for cancer research. But you might be wondering, where does the money go? What kind of cancer research are we talking about? In Queensland, there are these seeds that nothing eats. No fungus touches, no animals eat, birds eat, no ants eat, no insects touch. Nothing touches them, and the scientists are kind of going, what is it about these seeds that nothing will touch these seeds? So they extracted these seeds. So I did some experiments. This is a photo of the side of the face of a dog with a tumour on it, the size of a tennis ball. And I thought they would inject this tumour with this produce from the seed to see what would happen. 24 hours later, the tumour was gone. 3 weeks later, there was no sign of it entirely from the body of this dog at all. That's what cancer research does. Imagine that. An extract from a seed in Queensland is capable of completely annihilating in 24 hours a tumour from an animal. I believe this year, clinical trials in humans have commenced for this particular drug. So this year, I couldn't do the Grand Slam last year. I am doing the Grand Slam this year. I've raised, so far there are 5 rides only this year. So Auckland being the last ride, Adelaide but Canton. I've raised everything for 4 of the rides, and I'm halfway through the funding I need for the Auckland ride. But I will be completing the Grand Slam, and I really would like you to get behind Georgie and what she's doing. And so what I'd like you to consider, quite honestly, is all of you in the room, for those that you can, hopefully would like to join me. I'd like to, frankly, personally donate $50 into their bucket. If we all did it, she's got her $2.5 smashed, and she knows she'll be on with the ride. So I hope you'll join me in supporting Georgie and her ride and donating into a box which is somewhere. There it is. Into this box. Please consider reaching some cash out of your pocket as much as you're willing and want to and help Georgia get this done, because it's important for all of us. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you appreciated the story and the journey, and thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Okay, just very quickly, I'm going to introduce you to your auctioneer tonight, so now we'll get down to the fun stuff.